Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home, a long way from home.
It is early in 1761. Two African girls are stolen from their homes and families. They miraculously survived the forced march from the interior of West Africa to the dungeons, where they are chained underground in the dark for weeks until a slave ship comes to buy them in exchange for rum and guns. They move from the dungeon to a watery prison in the hold of a ship called Phyllis. Having never sailed before, they get sick from the sway of the boat and from the filth on the Phyllis. They vomit on each other. They defecate on each other. They hear women and children wailing and screaming, some praying for death. Sometimes they're led on deck, where they must move, dance, or be whipped. One little girl, the one with no front teeth, begins to fade. The other girl holds her hand tightly and hardens her will. She will not die.
On being brought from Africa to America. 'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand that there's a God, that there's a Savior too. Once I redemption neither sought nor knew. Some view our sable race with scornful eye. Their color is a diabolic dye. Remember, Christians, Negroes black as Cain may be refined and join the angelic train.
The little girl with no front teeth survives. She is renamed Phyllis, after the ship which took her from everything that made her human. Phyllis, a Greek goddess associated with spring, tender greens, and women's secrets. Phyllis, an English diminutive reserved for enslaved girls in the 1760s. By the time she turns 20, the little girl, now called Phyllis Wheatley, will have become an international celebrity, a published poet who visited with founding fathers Benjamin Franklin and George Washington, a darling of the English aristocracy, one of a few granted an audience with His Royal Highness King George III, ruler of Great Britain and King of Ireland. Supported by her extraordinary mistress, Susanna, Phyllis becomes known as the African poetess, and in 1774, Phyllis Wheatley becomes the first African American to publish a book.
Phyllis Wheatley to Ober Tanner. I am very affectionately your friend, Phyllis Wheatley.
I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. I know I've been changed. Angels in a heaven done changed my name. If you don't believe that I've been redeemed, angels in a heaven.
No one knows exactly how Phyllis Wheatley and Ober Tanner met. Some have guessed it was on the same slave ship. Others have wondered did they meet at church services when the Wheatleys traveled to Rhode Island. What is clear is that only 6 years after her arrival in Boston, Phyllis Wheatley had her first poem published in the Newport Mercury, the only newspaper in the very town where Ober Tanner lived. Did Ober and Phyllis begin to correspond after the publication of that poem? Are Messieurs Hussey and Coffin.
Did fear and danger so perplex your mind as made you fearful of the whistling wind?
Dear Phyllis, they say you are a Negro girl who writes poetry.
Hussey and Coffin to the raging sea. Where would they go? Where would be their abode with the supreme and independent God who made their beds down in the shades below, where neither pleasure nor content can flow?
I heard Mistress read the poem aloud twice. Composed by a Negro girl belonging to one Mr. Wheatley of Boston, she said. She took the humming then. She does that when she is troubled. I made a clash of the pots in the kitchen so she wouldn't know I was listening to a poem by a Negro girl, no less. Yes, mistress. Coming, mistress.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home.
I was exposed to Phyllis Wheatley when I was in college, and I thought she was despicable. I really despised her. I thought she was a sellout. I thought her poetry was kind of boring, and that she didn't really take pride in her African heritage. And even though I taught Phyllis Wheatley years later, and I was much more nuanced as an older woman by that point in my life who didn't see the world in black and white, so to speak, I still didn't really respect her. And what I'll tell you is that Phyllis Wheatley, when she was brought up from West Africa, she was she was bought by a wealthy white family. But the mistress of that household took a liking and a loving to Phyllis. Phyllis had this genius capacity for language. She just taught herself to read and to write and to speak English, and eventually they tutored her in Latin and Greek and mathematics and, astronomy. She was just this amazing genius kid. And her mistress became more and more committed to her. And would invite people to come in and listen to Phyllis's poetry, or would send her poetry out to be published in magazines and newspapers. She was like a stage mom. She was really proud of Phyllis. And so I started to think about, wow, what an interesting relationship. And what is it like if I was 7 and I had gone through the Middle Passage, just like, 6 to 12-week journey over an ocean, chained and, watching people die and people get whipped and sick. I mean, what if I had gone through that trauma and then I got here and then the person who offered me love was this mistress, was this someone who simultaneously owned me? It's a complicated position. And because I grew up in foster care, it started to ring bells with me of like being incredibly vulnerable and needing the care of an adult. When, in Phyllis's case, she had been kidnapped from everything she'd known. And all of a sudden I just started to really appreciate how complex her situation was, and the fact that she was publishing when she was still enslaved. And if you want to keep writing, you want to keep getting published, you want to keep getting the support of the people who own you, how outright in your criticism of slavery can you be? Do you see the constraints she was operating under? So I started to appreciate how masterful she was to still get her voice out there, to kind of stake a claim for her humanity, and maintain the support she was getting. It's a very difficult road to walk. And she did it. She did it well. And even when she wasn't being published, she kept writing. And even when she was sick, she kept writing. So then I started to appreciate her as an artist. Again, looking at my own self. To be an artist it's a path fraught with uncertainty. And people don't always want to pay you, or they don't always want to listen to you or publish you. So you have to be the one who decides, I will write today. It doesn't matter where it gets published or when I get paid for, or whatever the situation is. I'm a writer, or I'm an actor, or I'm a painter. You make that declaration. And that's something else I got from her. And she declared it, and she did it. And even when she lost her white benefactors because they died, she still wrote. And who was I to say that it was insufficient or that I would have done better? So that got me into her story, and that's why I'm a big proponent of Phyllis Wheatley today. Are you ready?
Please get ready.
A story has been told, a song sung. Are you ready?
Please get ready.
Share the tale, pass it on to a daughter and son. Are you ready?
Please get ready.
A story has been told, a song sung. Are you ready?
Please get ready.
Share the tale, pass it on to daughter and son.
Little ones and medium ones,
Pass it on, pass it on. Black ones and brown ones. Pass it on, pass it on.
old ones and young ones.
Pass it on, pass it on. Large ones, round ones. Pass it on, pass it on. Pass it on.